Welcome to Comics Bazaar, the channel of comics commentary and arcana. This video features Daredevil number 180, cover dated March 1982. The cover is by Frank Miller, inked by Klaus Janson. It's a very interesting design concept for this, with these necrotized hands, claw-like hands reaching out for Daredevil, cutting through his costume there as well. There's something about the style of those hands that reminds me of Ronin and some of the characters and figure work that Miller did in Ronin a couple of years down the road from this particular issue. So let's open this one up to the first page. There is not a splash page, but there's an interesting setting of the scene here. Hell isn't hot, it's cold. We have this huge figure with the pale skin speaking here. The queen, she didn't please me, so she's dead. Who's going to be my new queen? You're a pretty one. What's this? A ring? A shiny wedding ring? It's mine now, he says. You are mine, body and soul. So what's that scene about, intercut with these long horizontal black panels and the dialogue? It's cold and damp and foul. And if their stomachs didn't hurt, its inmates wouldn't know that they aren't quite dead. They shove closer together. They kneel on sores and blisters and they worship their king. So as I said, this is scene setting. We're going to find out a lot more about this particular character, and in particular the woman that he takes the wedding ring from as well. The title of the story, The Damned, and the creative team, Frank Miller, story and art. So Miller providing loose pencils or breakdowns, Janson doing the finished art and inks and the colors here as well. We've got Joe Rosen on letters, Danny O'Neill, editor. So let's continue with the story. The scene switches to high above, where life goes on and so does crime. So Daredevil's standing on this very narrow ledge outside this apartment building, and inside he's using his hypersenses to smell what's going on. You've got printer's ink mixed with sweat, and then of course his hearing. Add to that the rustling of thick paper, and you've got money. Throw in 3 racing heartbeats, mix well, and you've got nervous desperados. Interesting use of a color hold here in the background. Klaus Janson, responsible for colors. So as the finisher of the art, making a choice there to have a color hold for the rest of the cityscape. And we get a sense of also that it is... it is maybe late evening as well, or is it nighttime? Is that the moon there? Okay, that's a little bit unclear, but I do like the lighting in this particular panel. And this layout of a tall vertical panel and then a series of horizontal panels in a tier on the other side is a layout motif that we're going to get throughout the issue. There's one other layout motif, actually there's 2 other layout motifs that we get in the issue as well, and I'll point those out when we come to them. So inside we've got Turk and Grotto and another character, and they are dividing up their money. 50 for me, says Turk, 50 for Grotto, 50 for Zeke, 50 for me, and he's continuing on, and then Zeke says to him, what about the Kingpin? And Turk responds, nuts, why cut him in? And Zeke says, you know the score. He runs the mobs. He gets his cut. So we skip his cut, says Turk. This time out. What's he going to do about it? And I love the pacing here. Just Turk, his cigarette, smoking there. And just everybody's quiet. Nobody's saying anything. He looks over at Grotto. Nothing said. And then 50 for the Kingpin, 50 for me. That's so funny. Frank Miller really did have a good sense of humor at this time, and works it in really well into his writing on Daredevil. So Daredevil, speaking of whom, smashes in through the window. In he comes. He's on crutches because that's a point of continuity from the end of the previous issue where Elektra set a bear trap for him. So his right leg is in a cast, and he's actually hobbling around on a crutch. So that's even funnier that he's up here on that narrow ledge. In any case, Turk never learns when it comes to Daredevil. He pulls a gun on him. He thinks now he's a gimp. Ain't no gimp taking me. But Daredevil uses that crutch to smack him in the jaw. And he says here, and this is funny too, never learns, does he? How about you, Grotto? You got any smarter? No. And again, I love that open border panel as well. No background, the background cut out. Works so well. So he flips Grotto over into the wall. And Zeke, he says, me, I'm smart, real smart, regular Einstein. he is going to give up without a fight. And then the scene switches to the offices of the Daily Bugle. And we've got Ben Urich in the photo developing room, the dark room. And he's going through his reel of photographs, the film from the previous issue when he staked out a meeting between Randolph Winston Cherry, the mayoral candidate who was Kingpin's puppet, or who is Kingpin's puppet candidate, and a meeting between him and the Kingpin in Little Italy. And he got all these photographs of them, but he's going to spike the story because of Elektra's attack on him at the end of the previous issue. He's just spent 2 weeks in the hospital, and he thinks it's not, or he says to the little junior there, it's not my fight, not after what I've been through. So the assistant asks him, well, why they develop the pictures? I'll sell them to Jameson for inventory. I can use the books. And then he's taking a closer look at the photographs as they're being developed. And the junior asks him, who's this? So Ben takes a closer look. Just a bag lady who seemed to have a thing for the Kingpin. Might as well toss. Wait a second, he says. That almost looks like a campy kid. Run down the hall and get me my Kingpin file now. It's a really nice image there. The use of magenta here to indicate the red light in the dark room. But also Janson using here as part of his finishing of Miller's art. He's using a special craft technique from the period called duotone or duo shade. So you get two values of grey, a very light grey and a darker grey here on Vanessa's face. Really, really well done. Looks so good. And then look at this. This is a beautiful establishing shot of the southern tip of Manhattan with the twin towers there at the time. And you can see Janson doing using the color to color in the reflection of the twin towers and the reflection of that boat and wharf on the riverside as well. So well done. Such a beautiful shot. And also, again, this is a layout motif running through the issue, like the tall vertical panel, usually an establishing shot. We'll see that a few times through the issue. And I like this little kind of human moment here where Daredevil, because of the fact that he is slowed down by the leg that's in the cast, has taken a taxi cab from Hell's Kitchen all the way down to the southern tip of Manhattan. And the taxi driver here, delighted to have Daredevil in the back of his taxi. He says, would have thought you had other ways of getting around at times like this, like a Daremobile or something. Well, here we are, and Daredevil's handing him some money for the fare. He says, no way, I'm collecting on this fare, Mr. Daredevil, he says. I like this response in Miller's script, in the dialogue. I thank you, my foot thanks you. That's so good. That's really good. So the driver wants to, like, when he sees him going down into the subway, he says, look, I'll take you wherever you want, free, gratis. But Daredevil says that's okay because he's got a different aim here. He has met up with Ben Urich and they're both going down into the depths beneath Manhattan. And the reason they're going is because of this prospect now that the Kingpin's wife might still be alive. So they're going to look for Vanessa beneath the streets of Manhattan. So Daredevil says for years his love for Vanessa was all that held the Kingpin back, but then that building collapsed around her. That was in Daredevil 171. You can find my review of that issue here on the channel. And Urich continues and he says, and he's been upping the crime rate ever since. So they head into this sewage pipe. I like the spotting of blacks here, that rat there in the foreground as well. Good detail. Interesting use of screen tones here as well in the background. And I like the lighting here where it's getting darker and darker. We have that sense of it becoming darker as they go deeper down into the depths beneath Manhattan. So they come over a particular pipe that goes down 100 feet and it's lit and there's a ladder going all the way down. And Daredevil feels that it's warm too. Nice spotting of blacks there as well. And interesting the distinction here between Daredevil's hypersenses, where it feels warm to him, whereas to Urich it feels cold. So that really is a little small indication of just how precise and fine-tuned are Daredevil's hypersenses. So he says here, I'm going down there, you're going home. Great uplighting as well on the pair of them. And then again, that layout that I've mentioned before, like the tall vertical panel, and here Daredevil's dropping down into the pipe. And interesting choice here by Klaus Janson. So he is rendering the shadow, Daredevil's shadow, on the side of the piping in magenta, and just the way that he has how would I put it, like we've got a solid shadow at the top, but then it's broken down into hatching lines as well. So how would he have done this in this fashion? It's got to be a color hold. Yeah, it's an interesting, thoughtful technique from Janson. So then we've got Urich there, and he's thinking about how, like he hopes Daredevil will be okay, and if he isn't, then he's always got that Pulitzer Prize winning story about the identity of Daredevil and Matt Murdock. But just as he's making his way out of the tunnel, all these hands covered in sores and blisters reach out for him. So those are the hands that we saw on the cover, and he is caught, and his flashlight just falls to the ground. It's a great sequence. Really nice storytelling there. And then this is another one of those layouts that is going to repeat through the issue. The television screen motif. Two TVs, one on top of the other, and then the rest of the page laid out however Miller prefers. But this motif is going to repeat through the rest of the issue. And also, of course, for those of us familiar with Miller's oeuvre after Daredevil, we're seeing here shades of the coming use of the television motif in Dark Knight Returns in particular. So here we've got J. Jonah Jameson, and he is dealing with the fact now that the Daily Bugle is retracting their story about connection between Randolph Winston Cherry, the mayoral candidate, and his connection to organized crime. So the TV newscaster says, with these words, J. Jonah Jameson, publisher of the New York Daily Bugle, today retracted his claims that Councilman Cherry's campaign was sponsored by organized crime. And now I like the transition here from this panel that's open and it could be anywhere to a precise television set in the offices of Nelson and Murdoch, their new office in a skyscraper or a high-rise building. They're moving up in the world from the money they got from the Bugle case. And Becky Blake here is saying, their assistant, their secretary, she's saying, I guess it's all over. So Foggy pretty much makes the point, you can't depend on a client who folds on you. And then he's thinking about, well, where's Matt? And I like this. I like the design of their office with the glass walls so they can look out over the city. Interesting colouring there as well. The nighttime, that city glow perhaps, or just like really, really late evening before sunset. And Becky says that she tried him at home, so he's not there. And here's Foggy thinking, funny how he does that. Just ups and disappears for days at a time. Sometimes I wonder. So he's wondering what's going on there. And that's a nice little touch from Miller, of course, like acknowledging the tropes of superhero narratives where the hero with an alter ego has to disappear at crucial moments. So Foggy thinking about that. And I also like the panel design here where the Venetian blinds are cut in and across the top of the panel, even though it's not 100% in continuity with what we see here and here, because they should be above Foggy's head level, but nonetheless it's nice. I like it. And then we're far below again, the tunnels beneath Manhattan, and again that layout of the tall vertical panel, and we've got a homeless person there, and she's saying, it's gone just like that. What do you mean? Asked Daredevil. Can't you see, you blind? My leg, that the monster bit it off and ate it, and now it's gone. So this is a great little sequence where we see that look of empathy and also horror and concern and compassion for her, and then he gives her his crutch and he hobbles away and she laughs madly to herself. That's a really interesting little sequence there, and you learn something about Daredevil and how selfless he is as a character. It's a really nice little scene, I feel, from Miller. And now we get, again, this recalls the layout of the very first page. So there's repetitions, there's layout motifs running and interrelating throughout the course of this issue. It's very interesting. Also look at the cast shadow there in colour on the wall. Great colouring from Janson. And that's what you get when you've got less people working on a line process comic. You get much more cohesion of a creative collaboration, the less number of hands you have working together. So between Miller on script, the pencils, the layouts, Janson on the finishes in pencil and ink, and the colours, you've got that solid cohesion in the creative team. So then the arms, those hands, reach out for Daredevil now, and he allows himself to be picked up by them and carried down deeper into the depths. And the narration says, maybe he does belong here after all. Maybe he's just as lost and hopeless and crazy as they are. Only a crazy man would want to go to hell. Or a man without fear, yes? And there's that layout with the two television screens on top of each other. It is the incumbent mayor saying he hasn't lost yet. And then always we get this same shot of Randolph Winston Cherry, and also his full name said every time he's mentioned, repeating, but we're going to see a juxtaposition of this image of him and how he ends up at the end of this particular story. So Cherry is looks like he's winning in the mayoral race, and Kingpin here is delighted. He says, "It is I who he shall serve when he's elected." And Kingpin's number one assassin now is Elektra, and she's standing there at his beck and call in the darkened office that from which he conducts his business. By night's end, he says, "I will not only be Kingpin of the city's underworld, but its government as well. Nor will your contribution be ignored, Elektra. As my chief assassin, you were instrumental in pressing the Bugle to abandon its crusade. I shall retain your services." But there's no expression on her face, and she remains completely silent. I love the colouring here as well. The shading on that side of her, on the right side of her face, really, really well done. And also, something else to note as well is yes, that it was Elektra indeed who caused the Bugle to abandon its crusade in the previous issue by warning Urich and then injuring him, but not fatally, with her sigh. So then we're back down in the sewers beneath Manhattan, and we have got Daredevil there, and he's thinking to himself, these guys smell awful, but they're giving me a free ride, long ride too. Had no idea the city went down this far. I wonder, did this give Claremont the idea for the Morlocks reading this? Because this precedes the revelation of the Morlocks in Uncanny X-Men. He had already introduced Caliban in before this, in issue, if I recall properly, issue 149 of Uncanny X-Men, but not the Morlocks as a concept. So the Morlocks come later, but I wonder, did he get inspiration from this particular issue of Daredevil for all of that? So he's brought before their king. We only saw elements of his face on the first page, and now we get to see the full bulk of this king of the sewers, and he looks like a mirror image of Kingpin. And he says to Daredevil, "Hi, I'm the boss down here, and here's the woman that he has married." And that's a great shot of Daredevil's back muscles there as well. It's very well rendered. And so the King of the Swords asks rhetorically, isn't that right, maggots? And they all chant, king, 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 king. And Daredevil says, I need your help. I'm looking for a woman. Her name is Vanessa. And that sparks something in the eyes of that woman. So now we know that is Vanessa. It's her. I found her. Please let go. But he's grabbed by those hands again. And the King of the Swords says, you want the queen? Got your nerve, don't you? She's mine. Everything is mine down here, including you. You're going to feed the monster, stranger. Good thing too. You'll make a nice beefy main course. And that other guy we caught, he's too skinny to be more than a side order. So that's Urich. Daredevil realizes now that Urich was caught. He didn't make it home. And this upcoming is a great sequence. Great storytelling sequence from Miller and Janson. And here we go. So it's like a kind of like a cliched scene where they're dangling on a rope over this dark pool. And I like the way that we've got the reflection of their figures there in the dark pool as well. And there's a kind of like an amphitheater where all these subjects of the King of the Swords are watching. So he kicks in an appetizer, one of his subjects, into the water. This is a great little sequence where we see the water splashing and then turning color to red. And Daredevil smells it. He doesn't see it, of course, that smell, blood. And then he thinks of the woman he encountered earlier and what she was saying about the monster that ate her legs. She wasn't crazy. A monster did eat her legs. And then we see that look of resolve on his face. Anger as well, anger and resolve. It's great. And then this is another fantastic sequence here, very Will Eisner-esque, where the rope begins to snap with the weight of Urich and Daredevil, and down they go into the water. And I like the little detail of Urich's glasses coming off as well, and all the bubbling around them. There's some white media there cut into the inks. Even looks like there's some of that ink there is being put on with finger. That's nice. So Daredevil starts biting at the binding on the pair of them. Urich gets a glimpse of the huge crocodile to start, and it's coming towards them. That's a great scene. Really gives you the sense of there being underwater, and there we've the surface of the pool up top, and they're still sinking to the bottom. And look, wordless. So the words are over. We're moving into a silent sequence as they're underwater, and everything is going to be determined here by the skill of Miller and Janson with their storytelling. So we see Daredevil biting away at the cloth bonds, and he gets free just in time as the crocodile kind of swims right between the pair of them. Then it's going after Urich, of course, grabs his coat, and Daredevil gets that clothing binding that was around the pair of them, and he clamps the crocodile's jaws shut, binding them tightly. Up swims Urich to the top. He looks back. The tension is like, will Daredevil emerge? Look at that look on that disgusting face of the King of the Swords. Let's continue with the story. If I can get the page to turn here. There we go. Yeah, another couple of silent pages, and now we get a fight sequence. So Daredevil emerges from the inky pool. Up the steps he goes, confronts the King of the Swords, and punches him right in the jaw. But the King comes back with his club. He's clubbing away at Daredevil, and this must hurt. Like, Daredevil uses his broken or his injured foot to kick the King of the Swords right in the, it looks like in the chest there. And then we get this great sequence. There's a real sense of like how frenetic the movements are with the overlapping of the panels. And then basically Daredevil reverse headbutts the King, and then kicks him again with his injured leg, grabs that club. Yeah, great sequence of silent pages here. And now the victory for Daredevil. That's gotta hurt. So the King of the Swords is down. Vanessa takes the wedding ring off his hand, but she gives it to Daredevil and calls him king. So she has been maybe brain damaged in some way mentally by that explosion back in issue 171, and Daredevil is hailed king. Very, very interesting. And now we're back to that motif of the two television screens, and we have Randolph Winston Cherry accepting with delight his victory. And let me assure the good, the great people of New York, I will discharge the duties of this office with passion, that together we will make New York City the spearhead of the era of national renewal. And the newscaster says, with that, Randolph Winston Cherry accepted the mandate of the people of New York City and enjoyed the greatest landslide victory in the city's history. But just at this moment of triumph for the Kingpin, that wedding ring bounces on his desk, and he realizes Vanessa, and Daredevil simply says to him, she's alive, I have her. And then we get the Kingpin's emotional response, no words, but he asks here, what do you want? He knows, Cherry. That's a great close-up on Daredevil's eyes. That is such a great denouement, tying together of what's come before. Such a well done issue. That's Louise Jones, by the way. Later, Louise Simonson. Let's continue here, last page. And again, that layout, the two television screens, but look at him now. He's a broken man. 3 hours later only. It is with profound regret, shame, that I must withdraw from, not accept the office of mayor. The charges made against me, they're true, all of them. My conscience, it wouldn't let me, I'm sorry. So he's out. Cherry followed orders to the end, says Kingpin. Now, Elektra's in the office once more. I cannot allow this serious a defeat to pass without some gesture of retribution, however small. Someone must die. It cannot be Jameson, too much danger of a public backlash, nor can it be the lawyer Murdoch. Daredevil has defended him several times, and it is my wish to avoid so costly a conflict. But Murdoch has a partner, an unimportant man who few will miss and none will defend. So he shows the picture, the photograph to Elektra. Note, no expression on her face. Your next assignment, Elektra. And then the angle flips and we see who it is. You shall eliminate Franklin Nelson. Next issue, Last Hand. Yeah, and coming up in the next issue, as this letter writer says, I've heard that Daredevil 181 will be a double-sized issue and will have a story so dramatic that it will rival X-Men 137. Could you give me and my fellow Daredevil readers some tips on what's to come? And the response, the only letter here that gets any response, why spill the beans? In 30 days, you'll know. And it really is an issue, Daredevil 181, that does rival 100 Uncanny X-Men 137, and it's so well prepared for here in this particular issue. Yeah, Miller, Janson, they were on fire in 1981, 1982. This is one of the best comics that was coming out at the time, if not the best, if not better than Uncanny X-Men at the time. So I do hope that you enjoyed this review and commentary on Daredevil 180. Let me know what you think about the issue itself in the comments below to this video. If you enjoy my review and commentary, please like the video on YouTube. It really does help the channel. And if you haven't done so already, subscribe to the channel and stay tuned for more content like this.